Hey everyone. So you're probably wondering a number of things. Why is Jess's room a mess? Well, last night was a lot of fun. Where is Zena? Zena feels like shit and might have a cold on top of everything else, so they are sitting this one out. The arguments I make in this are both of ours, and I will try to make their particular arguments as clearly as I can, and they can either restate them or clarify them on the future stream, okay? So when I say this with the full authority of both of us on the channel. We need to talk about Lindsay Ellis. For those who don't know, Lindsay Ellis is a content creator on YouTube who has touched a lot of people. She has made essays that I still watch to this day that deeply impact my way of thinking about films, more critically engaging with arguments, etc. Back in March, around February, March, Lindsay Ellis had put out a tweet about Raya the Last Dragon stating that it had similar story structure to Avatar the Last Airbender. This was objectively true. The narrative presented in Raya was very similar. And beyond Raya just being, Elsa's persona, the movie was utterly forgettable. The claims against Lindsay Ellis were that this comparison was saying they are both Asian and that somehow she was being racist. I'm going to say something very direct. These claims are nonsensical. The idea that there is a majority of people, both Asian and Asian allied, who say that this is the case seems to not be true. That seems to be a mixed bag, and there are multiple people of color, including Asian folks, who have spoke up on Lindsay's behalf. One of the things we have a problem with on the left is this tendency to believe that we need to listen to everyone. And I think that's true. That belief is accurate. But listening with them isn't agreeing with them. And we need to listen to all of them, not just the ones that go with our own confirmation bias. Right? We talked about this on stream last night. It's not going to be in a segment, but I talked about the hypothetical about how multi-generational trauma could keep someone from vaccinating. And why, while that is absolutely regrettable, it is not an excuse. The online left has a problem with battering women. I'm going to call it what it is. We batter women. Zena has seen it. I have seen it. We have seen it time and time again with content creators such as Demon Mama and the way that people have reacted to her. I have seen content creators make more spicy takes than Demon Mama and get half the backlash. Why is that? Well, yeah, Demon Mama can be aggressive. Okay, fair. She can be somewhat conflictual at times. But to warrant the level of hate makes no sense. It doesn't. It doesn't warrant that. Merrick DeVille pointed out a historical fact. An entire contingent of the online left decided to lash out at her to the point of threatening to bring the feds down on her. ContraPoints was driven to fucking opiate use because of these fucking vultures. To be a leftist means to be against retributive justice, full stop. It means touting and understanding rehabilitative justice even when it is not convenient or it goes against what we feel is best, because what we feel often is a desire for revenge, the desire to get someone back, because there's something about that feeling of outrage and justified outrage, righteousness, that we really enjoy as human beings. I made a joke on Twitter saying that the individuals who are behind this are very similar to crusaders. They believe they are almost divinely inspired to go after these people who they've now demonized as monsters, very similar to the way crusaders did the Middle East. And what's interesting is the term I used for it was uwu deus vult, or deus vult uwu, because that's what it feels like. God wills it. There's no thought, there's no action, it's assumed to be justified. And now, with Lindsay Ellis leaving YouTube, what you have now is about two camps. One of them are the people with their fucking tails between their legs, running away and pretending they didn't do anything wrong after they delete all their old tweets and then go to bed pretending they had no part in this. The other part are the ones that are doubling down and making fun of a woman who is at her lowest. These people should be reviled, muted, and blocked. Full stop. The reason why this video is not waiting till stream is because I don't think it can. This is real right now in the algorithm, and I can't ignore that. But the bigger reason for this really is that this is happening right now, and it is important. So important, in fact, that I have a messy room, and I'm coming here with no makeup on, and my partner is sick. I am here with their blessing, so please don't worry too much about them other than send them some love on the Discord. They deserve it. They have been amazing with me the last few days, and despite them being sick, they still wow me. So enough about me being in love with my partner. Let's get into the content. So I want to cover kind of two sides of this. I want to talk about what's happening on Twitter, and I want to talk about what the original thing is. I'm probably going to get nailed for this and say that I'm doing something unethical, but I don't care. Lindsay originally made her letter public, and I'm going to go with the assumption that that public is okay because there's excerpts posted all over Twitter. If I am in the wrong, I do apologize. Despite my apathy, I do see that people could be upset with that because she's now put it back to patron level. To compensate for that, because I like Lindsay Ellis and because I want to support her, I've decided to become a patron, donating $2, which I may increase soon, so that I can access this, but also because I want to support a woman who is essentially deconstructing her business model because she was attacked online by dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of people who just went with anything they could to try to tear down a queer woman. I've talked about this in other videos before, but the online left really hates women. Really does. The number of bizarre comments that I get here is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fractal of the amount of hate you still see towards ContraPoints, Merrick DeVille, or Lindsay Ellis. There are people who have made it their fucking mission to catalog and chronicle these people's every foible. What the fuck is wrong with you? It's like a reverse cult of personality. These people aren't coming with logical arguments or critique. They're coming with vitriol. And while I know some of you out there may argue, but mine was rational and thoughtful critique. It probably was. I'll give you that benefit of the doubt for some of you. Doesn't matter. When your critique is part of the same flood, doesn't matter which snowflakes are clean and which ones have been pissed on. Guess what? The avalanche still kills you. Because it's not about good critique versus bad faith criticism. It's about all of it together mounting against a single human being. We're going to see this in a minute, but Lindsay actually kind of compares this to the Isabella Fall story, and if you haven't seen that video, you should watch it. I agree. While it's not 100% one-to-one comparison, because obviously we're talking about a trans woman who is torn down by trans Twitter, the simple fact of the matter is that when Lindsay was at her lowest, a lot of content creators didn't come to her aid. They did not speak up against their communities, and they optically were quiet. This is why I want a trans coalition. Because I never want that to happen to me, or Demon Mama, or Anatomic, or any other trans person on this fucking platform or the other god-awful one. Anywho, let's get into this. Again, apologies if I'm breaking some code, but again, we got shit to do. Oh, that's dark, so let's fix that. All right, so let's get into this shit. We're going to listen to big chunks of it. I'll make statements in between. We are using the text to voice because I want to.
This was going to be a YouTube video, but I just don't have it in me to invite that kind of scrutiny, to be the last in the sick, sad line of YouTubers who get all weepy on camera and cry about how they just can't do this anymore, boo hoo hoo. I had planned to move video content to Nebula, but I realize now that doing that is just keeping wounds wide open. My life ended 9 months ago, what has been taking up bandwidth ever since then has been a ghost. It's almost funny how many people will insist that I have lost nothing, you know, because subscriber count is the only metric for success and cancel culture doesn't exist. One YouTube channel chugging along on algorithmic inertia is not success, it's just an engine driving on fumes. Many will say this is being melodramatic, that my life isn't over, that there was absolutely nothing stopping me from brushing myself off, building back up goodwill and shutting up and playing the game. And I tried that. In a way I suppose it's good that I did, because I needed to learn the hard way that that was never going to work. There is no unfucking this. You can't find the energy if there is nothing left to convert to it. You can't be a better person if you are nothing but the hollow shell of one.
So, my thoughts on this initially are that I think Lindsay is absolutely correct here. Trauma can be this devastating, guys, right? Many of the people in the trans community, as well as the larger queer community, are traumatized, either by abusive parents, by abusive friends, by people, lovers, whatnot. And it exists at every level of society. There are kink communities that are toxic as hell. That's not to say that kink is toxic. Kink is great. Found a new one of mine yesterday. But the fact of the matter is that even communities that are supposed to be awake and aware do this. They tear people down and they will destroy it. And this happened with Contra, and we see that in the canceling video. We see this with Lindsay. At what point are people going to acknowledge what they did? Let's move on.
"2021 has been the worst year of my life. I am traumatized by it. To this day I still have people scolding me by how I handled it, that I should have handled it differently, that I should have controlled my stance, as if I had the capability to know what any of these people were even saying to strangers on Twitter while I was shitting blood for weeks on end. The worst thing about this whole year is that I can't even admit this trauma because of all the rhetorical devices people have already come up with to dismiss it. That centering my own pain is evidence of me not listening. Does it occur to these people that you can listen and disagree with other people's conclusions?
True.
That I'm weaponizing my fragile white womanhood or whatever to point out that having thousands upon thousands of people who you have never met hate you and say whatever will get them the most updates about is, in fact, traumatizing. That people I used to know would flagrantly lie about me on Twitter.com to the tune of thousands of retweets and tens of thousands of likes, and I just had to sit there and take it. My favorite are the people who dismiss any potential harm I might have incurred as justified because I am a wealthy, white woman. I am not wealthy, while these same people's hearts positively bleed for Britney Spears.
So all of this is objectively true. Like, clearly she's talking about what's happened to her. I'm going to believe her because I'm a decent human being. And I gotta admit, the metaphor of shitting blood, unless that's accurately literal, that's pretty solid. Here's the thing. Yeah, no, you will go on Twitter and you will see rhetorical device after rhetorical device used as a way to tear down Lindsay and prove all the ways that she's bad, supposedly. The fact of the matter is that centering on her own pain and her own history was the right thing to do. Mask Off was an amazing, if not haunting, video. Anyone who disagrees is just lying. I saw this with Brennan Beckwith before he/they randomly decided to delete the tweet, but at one point Brennan literally framed that as gaslighting. How fucking stupid do you have to be? I'm not trying to aim any hate at Brennan or anyone else that went against Lindsay, but what the fuck is wrong with you people? A woman talks about her trauma and her issues. She completely agrees with multiple of the critiques and apologizes for some of them, and you're saying that's gaslighting. First off, that doesn't meet the criteria of gaslighting. Second off, were you stoned? Because I just don't understand that concept. Like, first off, you're misusing terms, so stop it. Go watch our video on gaslighting if you don't understand what the hell I'm talking about, because, again, the online left loves using psychological terms inappropriately. But additionally, this idea that that video was gaslighting is nonsensical. She absolutely should have framed it around her own pain and her own experience, because that is the way a person grows and learns. They reflect, you fucking ghouls. As far as the question about her controlling her stance, no YouTube content creator can control their audience. The only thing we can do is generally try to make calls of action that will aim them in certain directions. We should never use them to create harassment, and we should try to, at every opportunity, stop them from doing shit like this. I don't know what supposedly Lindsay Ellis stands did, but if you're not going to come with receipts, please go fuck yourself. I literally don't care. None of that is Lindsay's fault. This is just, if anyone's brought that up saying her stands did anything, how the fuck do you justify that when none of her rhetoric has said this? In fact, even during the whole weird Omegaverse shit, she specifically told her fans to not go harass that crazy woman. Like, I love how people cherry pick shit. Last but not least, this question about fragile white womanhood. I'm going to get really in trouble for this, and I'm still going to say it. It is absolutely nonsensical to use a person's status as a majority part of a group to ignore the parts of them that are part of a marginalized group. Lindsay Ellis is a queer woman. That matters. Does that mean that there's questions around, her race? How does that factor into her critiques? That's fair. But to say that critique about Raya the Last Dragon, a movie that no one gave a shit about, save for people that fucking ship that dragon as, like, again, Elsa's persona, nobody cares. They wanted to look for something, and they wanted to get Twitter drama going. That's why they did this. As far as her being wealthy, let's do the math. So she's recently got rid of her $10 tier. So my understanding is that she does $2 tier right now. She has over 10,000 patrons. So I know that YouTube ad revenue is garbage. So I'm going to assume she makes probably only a couple thousand off that a month. So let's assume maybe 2,000 in ad revenue. That's me being generous. So that's what? 2 times 12, that's 24. Then 120 for the thing. So we're talking about 144,000 if we're lucky, and I'm not counting anything else. Then you factor in the costs of her employees, their healthcare, because she is a liberal/leftist, and thus she actually gives them healthcare. Any other operational costs, equipment costs, maintenance costs. What do you think this woman fucking makes? Right? Like, what do you think this woman makes? Like, it's people can't do fucking math.
These people don't see how similar these talking points are to the same boomer, bootstrap parenting style that I thought most of us had agreed was abusive, that you need to toughen up, accept your punishment, accept that even if the reaction was outsized that you did something wrong, because where there's smoke there's fire. Grow a thicker skin. These same people who always crow about believing victims telling victims of public dogpiles that they do not deserve to claim their trauma,
so
let
true.
alone to process it, because they deserved it. There is no such thing as cancel culture. There is no incentive/reward structure in places like Twitter to call people out. There are no updates/faves/follows/retweets for hotting a take on whomever is trending.
Yeah. So you want to talk about type of gaslighting. Imagine being a fan of Lindsay Ellis and then turning on her because of your misunderstanding or your decision to jump on the bandwagon, and you suddenly start saying that her pain doesn't matter. That's gaslighting, because it goes from the sort of love-bombing parasocial shit people do moving into just flat-out horror. This idea of grow a thicker skin is, first off, it doesn't meet any kind of mental health understanding. It's entirely toxic. It is the thing that abusive fathers say to their sons when they beat the shit out of them. This is the things that kids are told when they are being bullied excessively to the point of near self-harm or suicide. This is the most toxic rhetoric from people that say they want to believe victims. Oh, well, she's a more well-off person than me. That doesn't mean that her trauma isn't real. You fucking ghouls. Like, again, how do you justify this in your heads? Do you sleep okay on this? Because if you do, stay the fuck away from me. Stay the fuck away from my partner. Stay away from our community. Because, no, I'm genuinely serious. I think you're a danger to yourself and others. That's my personal take, by the way. I'm not psychoanalyzing anyone. Don't want to get that accusation again. She brings up an essay in 2015 called Hot Allostatic Load. She read it, made her cry, and I'll go over her points quickly. One of the most common tools of exclusion is through mobbing, which is rarely talked about because unlike rape, murder, etc., it's not easy to pin it on a single person or scapegoat. Mobbing is emotional abuse, true, practiced by a group of people, usually peers, over a period of time, true, through methods such as gaslighting, rumor mongering, and ostracism. You want more on this? Look at some of our videos talking about the social ecology of abuse. We covered these with Beyond Safe Words, right? It's most documented in workplace or academic environments, i.e. key points of capitalist tension. But it's thoroughly institutionalized into feminist, queer, and radical spaces as well. Here is why it's horrible. 1. It has an unusually strong power to damage the victim's relationship to society because it can't be written off as an outlier. As some singular monster, it reveals a fundamental truth about people that make it difficult to trust ever again. People become like aliens, like a pack of animals, that can turn on you as soon as some mysterious pheromone shift marks you for death. The insidious nature of emotional abuse. How do you fight ostracism and rumors? They leave no bruises. They just starve you. Fucking true. This happens all the time with CPS calls, too. They will downplay emotional and mental abuse because it's harder to prove. But we know based on brain evidence that this actually has the same effect as physical and sexual abuse. Like, are you people on drugs? And last but not least, mobbing typically occurs in places where the victim is trapped by some need or obligation, work, school, circle of friends. This can prolong exposure to damaging extremes. Yeah. If your entire livelihood is attached to content creation, luckily mine isn't, being bombarded like this, you can't just step away from it because you don't get food. We already went over the math of how y'all don't understand what wealth is, but the fact is that, like, having to continue owning, being part of a platform and engaging continually subjects you to the abuse. You can mute and block as many as you want, and trust me, I do. We control our fucking comments for a reason. And don't worry, we'll be doing it on this one too. So anyone who wants to come in and hating about Lindsay or me or anything like that is just going to be deleted. I'm just letting you know that. Please save your breath. You're just making work for Thanagor. So, one second. Sorry about that. I was checking on Zena, who is not feeling good. So we're going to try to get through this, try to be thorough, but we're going to get through it. For these reasons, PTSD is almost an inevitable outcome of any protracted mob casing. True.
The Isabel Fall case is almost a textbook example about how online mobbing harms people, and how the people who participate in these mobs never engage in any self-reflection. When some people read Fall's helicopter story and questioned the trans bona fides of the author in early 2020, Twitter did what Twitter does and ruined Fall's life, death by a million cuts, no one single person even beginning to question whether they did anything wrong by jumping to the worst possible faith interpretation of both the text and the author. After a profile written by Emily Vanderwerf was published late in 2021, were lessons learned about the way we use internet mobs to tear down people we don't know because of situations we don't understand? No one of Fall's detractors, Neon Yang, became the new scapegoat du jour, using some of the exact same tactics used the prior year to attack Fall.
Yep. So I've seen people on Twitter talking shit about this, saying that, oh, Lindsay's comparing herself to the Isabella Fall situation. Yeah, because she should. They're both awful. You fucking leeches. Like, here's the thing. Isabella Fall is an example of a situation where a trans woman was utterly and completely reviled by her own community because people walked in with the worst possible takes and then justified it through trauma. This happened last night on stream. I mentioned that, right? Where we were having a conversation about a situation where a person who had been part of a marginalized group due to past trauma over medicalization refused to get the vaccine and the possibility that this negatively impacted the people around them. We even changed the hypothetical and said, well, what if they actually got their partner and their friends sick? Guess what? Got a lot of pushback for that because my statement was, I don't give a shit. While I deeply regret any kind of trauma in the past, to me, stating any of that is similar to getting the vaccine is just conspiracy theories. And we don't accept this from Karens. I don't know why we'd accept it from anyone else. The fact of the matter is that this idea that like we're justified in harming this person because we're mad is abuser talk. It's actually really funny to me because there's a ton of YouTubers who talk about abuse and then they engage it themselves online. I've talked about a few of them. You can go find those videos. But people who talk a lot about mental health sometimes can be really gross because they use it. And this is the thing we know about narcissistic personality disorder. This is the thing we know about manipulators and abusers. They will sometimes use mental health jargon to reify their abuse. So no, this is an absolutely appropriate comparison. Not exactly one-to-one, trans community versus the larger left tube. But no, Lindsay is absolutely correct in this. Just absolutely. If you want to know more about the Isabella Fall thing, I strongly recommend that you go and read, watch that video or read the article in our stream links page. From hot allostatic load. Feminist queer spaces are more willing to criticize people than abusive systems because they want to reserve the right to use those systems for their own purposes. At least attacking people can be politically viable, especially in a token system where you benefit directly by their absence, or where your status as a good feminist is dependent on constantly rooting out evil. When the bounty system calls for the ears of evil people, well, most people have a fucking ear. That's the thing. You've seen this online, right? Where so say Lindsay gets canceled, which she did, and she gets a whole bunch of hate for it. And then that hate becomes something worse. It starts to spiral. And then people come to her aid with generally decent responses, some of them shitty, some of them, way underwhelming. But the fact of the matter is that there are people who will not speak up on behalf of other content creators because optically it can pull you into the mix. If anyone remembers Philosophy Tube, she had a video that came out right after Queer. I think it was the one right after Queer, where she, kind of layered this series of arguments about parasocial engagement. And it kind of got to this nutshell of her talking about what happened with Contra and how it negatively impacted her. And it was fucking painful to watch. Now, I bet you a whole bunch of motherfuckers out there are sat there and made fun of her about that, going, oh, boo-hoo, you're this identity. And then she turns out to be a trans woman. And these are the same motherfuckers that gave her shit about that transition joke. No, these people have no ethics. They have nothing. They just have reactions. Lindsay goes on to say that she knew quitting YouTube was going to be happening eventually. It is something that you eventually run out of steam for. It's fair. The plan was always to end with Love Never Dies, since it seemed the best place to end, with some semblance of energy rather than keeping it from withering away to nothing. Right? Makes sense. She goes on.
My initial plan was to leave YouTube for Nebula, but I realize now that this is only entrenching myself in a more intimate form of harm rather than the broad, buckshot kind that YouTube invites. I won't go into detail, not right now, anyway, but I can't do video content for them either. I can't make content, period. I just can't do this anymore. There is no healing as long as there is attachment to the thing that makes you suffer, and the thing in this case is being in the public eye at all. What I wanted was to quietly disappear, but since this is a platform where people are paying me to make content, I feel like I have to make a statement. If it were just me by myself, I would just sign off and say goodbye and that would be it, but I have a team who depends on my company for health insurance, and including dependents I supply full benefits for 8 people, and here in the US employer-based insurance is often the only feasible option. Saying to everyone sorry about your children, but they can't have insurance anymore because Twitter makes me sad just doesn't seem like a fair deal. None of them incidentally know I'm posting this.
I disagree with none of that, and I think it's honorable that she's trying to keep at least things afloat enough for her people to maintain things. We'll finish this up, and then I have thoughts.
So the only thing I can do for now is keep this page active with the loose promise that someday I'll figure out something in the future to make up for this, while asking you please stop messaging me apologizing for not being able to subscribe anymore. You don't owe me anything. This Patreon is, like my own life and career, just running on fumes. But all I know now is that being in the public eye at all is a losing game, and I regret all of it. I regret every time I've ever stood up for anyone. It always backfires. I regret every time I pushed back against something unjust, it was always just used to hurt me. I regret every time I ever stood up for myself, I never did it correctly. I regret every time I showed any vulnerability, just more ammunition to be used against me later. I regret every time I ever tried to play the game with peers and colleagues. They will drop you the second you aren't popular on Twitter anymore. It's all hollow and brittle. And if there is one thing I have learned this year, it is how eminently expendable I am.
Ouch.
The good, progressive cis, straight, wealthy white men keep on trucking and coming out on top because deep down, they know that the systems they profess to stand against ultimately exist to benefit them. And to all the people telling me I need to grow a thicker skin or remove myself from the conversation altogether, you are right. I don't have it in me to do the former, so I shall do the latter. Hope your new year is better than this.
So, anyone that's a fan of streamers knows that this is objectively true. Anytime we come out in defense of anybody, we will get lambasted. I still get comments that we have to delete stating that, yeah, I get shit for defending Demon Mama. I don't even agree with some of Demon Mama's takes. I actually have hard passes on some of those takes. And guess what? I still really like Demon Mama. I still think she's an overall net good. I say the same thing about Vosh, and I get shit for that. There is a way in which we don't weigh people correctly. We don't actually look at what their overall positive gift is. We just go with our natural confirmation bias. And if that has a negative spin to it, we ignore all of the positives a person does and only look at the negatives, which in honest case with Lindsay Ellis is like a snapshot compared to the sheer amount of good she's done. This is the trap we get stuck in with content creation. The more authentic, the more vulnerable, the more open we are, the more likely it can be used to hurt us. I said this on Twitter, but one of my greatest fears is that I am going to at some point say something that is going to get me canceled. I've even thought about doing a video explaining every time I've ever done a bad thing, and it's starting to sound more and more appealing because I might as well just get that shit out there so you guys just don't have to use it or find it on your own, and then I have to catch up. But the idea that like every time you stand up for a friend or a colleague or try to do something, you are attacked, you are harmed, you are beaten for it is disgusting. And the fact that no one wants to admit this out of these people, and again, I'm not a huge fan of the term woke scold, but it kind of fits. When you use progressivism as a weapon, to beat up a queer person, to beat up a person who is a singular entity. It doesn't matter how salient your critiques are. It doesn't matter what you're doing, because for every one of those salient critiques, there's 100 motherfuckers posting absolute horror. People like to, through parasocial means and negative parasocial means, build up content creators as something more than human, more than a person, and they're not. We're human beings with very real thoughts and feelings, and we make mistakes. I've made plenty in my life. My views on trans people have changed drastically. I used to not understand trans people. I'm now one of them, and I adamantly defend neopronouns, non-binary people, xenogenders, because I was willing to learn and grow. And that's the thing we don't do. We don't let people do that. I know it's been said in canceling, it's been said in mask off, but we really don't, guys. We don't let people learn and grow. This platform is going to be less because of the loss of Lindsay Ellis. I said something similar to this back when we made our original video, which I posted to Twitter recently. These allegations against Lindsay Ellis are absolutely nonsensical. There is nothing racist in that critique. It is a story structure critique. Now, was that critique coming out in a way where during the time where there was a ton of Asian American violence happening, right, where there was a ton of anti-Asian American violence happening and causing real harm? No, it's probably not the best combination of factors, but that's not really Lindsay's fault. That's just bad timing in general. The fact that peers and colleagues have dropped her because of this is utterly disgusting, and you people should fucking look in the mirror. This is the thing I live in fear of. The day I make a mistake and you all come at me. That shit fucking messes with you. And the idea that the alliances, the people that I've made connections with, the incredible generosity I've seen from certain content creators could be ripped away in the yank of an eye because it wouldn't be optically positive to engage with me is so fucking gross. Stop telling YouTubers to grow a thicker skin. Why don't you people learn the difference between offense and abuse? The onus is not on us to necessarily change. We have to make that choice. And there are times where that is necessary. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm not saying we're in any way perfect. And if you've heard that through this, you already are bad faith enough that I don't think you made it this far. But the fact of the matter is that the onus is on you to change in this case. You keep saying that we need to change, that we need to apologize, we need to do all sorts of shit for you. No, I don't have to do shit for you. Period. Neither did Lindsay. And the fact that you came for blood, asking for her to give some bullshit apology for nothing. Put up or shut up. Are you willing to change? Are you willing to grow? Are you willing to own what you've done time and time again on Twitter? And if you're a person that didn't do this shit, legitimately didn't, and is just pretending you didn't, look at the people around you. Who makes salient critiques but is understanding and compassionate? And who is out for blood? Because those people out for blood are not safe to be around. Because these are the people that will turn on you. They are the people that are just waiting for a mistake. I'm really sorry, Lindsay. You probably will never see this, but for what it's worth, I am really sorry. You didn't deserve this. And I don't care about you being cis or white or any other majority group. You're a human being that didn't deserve this, and your identities have nothing to do with whether or not you deserve to be harmed or not. Isn't that the argument against harming marginalized people, is that who we are, things we can't help about ourselves, are okay, they're fine? Lindsay is the way she is, and nothing she's done has been devastating or caused immense harm. It's caused outrage, it's caused offense, but offense is not abuse. Anyone that says it is lying to you. Expect to see videos come out tearing her down. You know the general criminals, the people that are going to do this shit, the ones that are going to be the usual suspects, so-called progressives that are going to make every video where they take every bad faith criticism possible and tear this person down. My suggestion is to unsubscribe. Remove them from your view. Toxicity is bad for you. Stop engaging with it. Stop feeding that need for outrage. It's hurting you, and it's hurting other people. I'm going to leave this here by simply saying this. This platform is less because Lindsay Ellis isn't on it. And no one had the right to do this. I want these people scoured out of communities. I want them away from me because they are scary. They are harmful. They are abusers. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, consider donating to us. You can support us on our website, transgirltherapist.org. You can also help us on our Patreon, link below, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.